Good evening, people. Welcome along. Saturday, the 9th of January, looking at 1998 in my policing career. 33 years in 31 days. Jenny, Ivy, good evening. Welcome along. Thank you for dropping in. Everybody else is here. I can't see in the platform that I'm using. I can't, unless you comment, I can't see who's joining. But thank you for being here. Good to have you along. So we're looking at 1998. If you were with me yesterday, you know that 1997 was the year that I moved into roads policing, and that was like the best thing ever for me. Thoroughly enjoying myself in this department. Nice cars, and it used to always be the thing is, they used to call the section officers used to call us traffic something beginning with W and ends in KS, and shiny pants and petrol wasters, because we're just shiny pants because we were sat in the cars all the time, and petrol wasters, fairly obvious. We used to call them stills because they were still on section and not doing anything else. But it really was a great move for me into roads policing. Thoroughly enjoying my time there. Photograph here that I'll put up on the screen from, I think this is 1998. I'll put that up there. Big beaming smile on my face. Look at my skinny face. I'm skinny arm. I still got skinny arms, but that was, I was running. I played hockey all the time. I umpired as well, but I was also running, and the weight had just come off me. Some of my wedding photographs from the following year, I look gaunt. I've lost so much weight. But there I am. We'd moved in Greater Manchester from covert body armour to overt body armour, which is what I've got on there. But my smile really says it all there. Absolutely loving this role and loving the job. This photograph was actually taken at a wedding. I was on duty. You can just see on the right hand side, low down near my waist, you can just see a pair of hands. And just up by my ear level on the right hand side, you can see a nose. That's my wife to be. She was at a wedding. I was working. I couldn't get the time off. I had to be on duty, but it was on my patrol area. So I sort of showed my face at the wedding outside. I didn't go to the service, but I showed my face outside and said hello. And of course, wedding photographers being wedding photographers, I then ended up in a situation where he goes, "Ooh, let's have a photograph of the groom being arrested by the policeman." And I don't think I ever got to see those photographs, probably fortunately. But yeah, we staged photographs locking up the groom for the wedding and all the rest of it. But the crux of that really, though, is that at that time I was having an absolute ball as a traffic cop. Absolutely loving the job, loving the role, loving the cars, loving everything about it. And so it was a great time. Then at this time, again, we are still very much dealing with a lot of car thieves, a lot of stolen wheels, a lot of stolen stereos and everything, but pursuits was something that just happened. I wrote I can't remember whether I wrote a blog about it or not years ago, but my first introduction to a pursuit when I was on section was basically, if traffic were behind it, you got out of the way and you stayed out of the way. And we parked up on this main road, and you could hear what they would call the bandit vehicle. They don't call it the bandit vehicle anymore because they want to be politically correct about these things, but we called it the bandit vehicle. And we were parked up on a side road, and you could hear all the commentaries on the radio saying, "They're coming this way and they're going that way," and most of it. And we sat parked up, not getting in the way, but just waiting. And the bandit car went past us down this main road, swiftly followed by a traffic car. And another, and another, and another, and another, and another, and a plane car, and a dog van, and all sorts of. And you think, we used to have this huge long daisy chain of pursuits are managed much, much differently now, and it's more strategic and far safer. But there was sometimes a huge daisy chain of people behind the vehicle pursuing the car. And some of the villains at the time particularly stole cars in order to get chased by the police. Part of what they got a high on it. They wanted to be chased by the police. And when you think of some of the dangers through red lights at 90, 100 miles an hour with not even a care, and we are pursuing, but then we've got to go right down, speed off, check, boom, boom, carry on. So it was always very, very difficult. But when you look back at it now, you think, stupid, we needed to look at a different way of doing things and all the rest of it. But as it was, that's what we did. That's how we operated. And so we were doing things. So we used to get a lot of cars that were nicked, and a lot of cars that were used by local sort of young lads as a thrash around car. And unlike the powers that we have now, where we think something's been used in crime and we can just seize it, to seize a car and actually take it off the road, we had to have legitimate reason to do that. And that would be, generally, it would be suspected of being stolen as the primary cause. But of course, we couldn't always prove who the owner was. And so it was just this sort of pool vehicle that local villains and lads were using to thrash around and taunt the police with most of it. And so what we used to do, and this is where letting things down comes in, is that if we found the car, and for argument's sake, there's been a bit of a pursuit, but then we don't know who the car belongs to, and maybe the pursuit was 2 nights ago, and then you find it, and you think, it's parked up here, nobody with it. All that's going to happen with this is at some point somebody's going to be driving it. They're not going to have insurance. They're going to drive it like an idiot. And if we get behind it, we've got a pursuit on our hands. What can we do? I know. So we used to carry a valve tool. When a lot of the traffic cops carried a little valve tool. Just unscrew the center of the valves and just completely deflate the tires, take the valve away. They can't blow the tires up again, even if they stood there with a foot pump. They just couldn't do it unless they had the valves to replace them. So we used to just immobilize the vehicle, therefore sort of making it safe, because they weren't going to be taking risks on the road in that car, at least. However, the delights of health and safety got in the way of that eventually. And they decided that with health and safety, if we let the tires down and somebody drove it and then had a crash because the tires were down, it would be down to us. You sort of think, if you've got 4 flat tires and you're driving down and you try to move away, you're going to know. But it was deemed that we couldn't be doing that, and so ultimately we then had cars that we couldn't lift and seize and would be used again, but we couldn't. But we had a fairly non-damaged way of sorting it out. But anyway, that was that. The second thing that happened then was that on nights, generally you would work on your own during day shifts and on late shifts, but on nights you would normally double up and we would double crew. If there was an odd number on our team on nights, I would often quite happily work alone. But most of the time we doubled up. And there was one chap that I worked with for a long time, mentioned him yesterday. He was also one of the instructors, and I don't actually think that he came to us this early. I don't think he came to us 1998. I think it was maybe later, but it's worth mentioning today, and then it's done. Is a guy called Mel. He used to work on our block, and he, if he was driving, we'd share the driving, or one of us would drive one night and the other would drive the next. And if he was driving, every time we got in a pursuit or a situation where a car was going to be abandoned and we were going to get in a foot chase or anything like that, he would always pull up the car. You get the abandoned vehicle comes to a stop, and he would always pull up right next to it, near side to offside, so close I can't get out of the car. And then he'd get out and run off and catch the prisoner and say, "My prisoner, I got him," and all the rest of it. He used to always block me in, so I'm trapped. I had to clamber over seatbelts and gear levers and get out the other side in order to get out and try and assist. But there we go. 1998. Also, yesterday that I showed the car that we had, and that had become my car and had still got the registration plate and all the rest of it. But also in that car was eventually written off, the 722, and it was replaced with this, which should come up now. There, it was replaced with the S-Reg 289, so slightly facelifted version of the Ford Mondeo. Much nicer livery on these, with the checker bar at the bottom and the lovely sort of silver and blue lines on either side of the Jambuti stripe, if you like. Again, this was one of my cars that I drove more often than not, and a lot of the kit that had been in the 722 just transferred across into this car. Thing of note, really, at the time, these cars were, despite contrary to popular opinion, these cars are not souped up. They're not performance tuned or anything. They are just standard cars. Again, 2.5 litre V6. These cars also were real base level models. So you can imagine going to the Ford dealership and saying, "I want the 2.5 litre V6," and say, "Oh yes, sir. Would you like the leather steering wheel, and would you like the leather seats, and would you like all the fancy extras and the nice alloy wheels?" Ours were cloth trim, cheap interiors. If you can notice there, it's not got alloy wheels; it's got wheel trims. We used to have to cable tie them on, but that was just the way things were at the time. But that was my next car. I'll cover this bit now. This car lasted for several years. They were normally hung onto for 3 years and then replaced. So this was due to be replaced in 2001. And it was coming towards the end of its service when it was written off. There was one section of road in Wythenshawe that all the traffic officers knew that if you drove down that stretch of road that was on a slight bend at any speed, there was a culvert that caused a dip in the road, and it completely destabilized the car. It really destabilized the car, and it was well known, be careful on that bend. I went to a collision one night where a young lad had been speeding. He lost control of his car through this culvert, completely lost it, flipped it over, all sorts of mess. We get the whole thing sorted out and all the rest of it. And despite my objections, he was put through for prosecution by my sergeant. And I said, he shouldn't be being prosecuted for this. And I explained, it's complicated, but I won't go into the full reasons. But I said he shouldn't be being prosecuted for this. Sometime later, one of the other officers was driving that car down that same stretch of road, hit it at speed, hit the culvert, lost it, wrote off that car. That car was then a total write-off. I was quite happy to point out to my sergeant that the circumstances between the two collisions were exactly the same, and neither of them were driving without due care and attention. One of them was both were driving at excess speed. One was driving lawfully at excess speed, the other wasn't. So I always said that the driver of the other car, and we could never prove what speed he was driving at, was driving at excess speed and been a victim of a very poor road surface, not driving without due care and attention. He said, "No, I don't care." He was driving without due care and attention. So I sneakily sent it to the prosecutor and said, and I understand that the conviction was laid aside. Because the traffic officer was never going to get prosecuted, then that's not what I was looking at. But I was just saying we need to be fair, but we need to be balanced. And the prosecutor agreed, and I think the conviction was set aside. But that was the demise of the 289 a few years later. What else have I got? That was a new car. Now, those of you that know me to any reasonable degree will know that obviously that I've retired, but also will know that for the last 2 years, I have been developing a car detailing business, which is something that I enjoy doing. And that has been set up and has been running for 2 years now and is part of my retirement plan, something that I really enjoy. But it's not something that is new to me, because one of the things that I always found when I was on the traffic unit is that the cars were immaculate. Inside the cars, they were immaculate. They were clean, they were tidy, they were pleasant. Compare that to a Panda, where you take over a Panda and there'd be Coke cans rolling around in the footwells and banana skins and in the door pocket and a half-eaten apple under the seat and sweetie wrappers everywhere. Sometimes they were absolutely disgusting and it used to infuriate me. So it was really nice going onto traffic where the people who were on traffic cared about the vehicles and looked after them. So cleaning cars and looking after cars, though, is not something new to me. And I've always looked after my own cars. But here's a photograph. This is probably 1990. The reason I say that is because some of the cars in this image here are actually R-Edges. So, in fact, no, wait a minute. No, no, the S-Reg is newer. So this will be 1998. So these cars are all here. And what we've got here is 3 R-Edges. The third one from the left in the fan is my car, the 289. And then behind at the back is one of the old P-Regs, which is very much due for retirement. That actually there is me on the right-hand side. And the chap that stood with me wasn't then, because I was now operating independently, but that was Bucko, who was my tutor when I first came to the traffic unit. And there is one other guy stood by the second car. And what we'd done that morning is we'd cleaned, it was a Sunday morning, we'd cleaned all the cars, we'd washed them all down, checked all the kit inside, made sure all the weekly checks were done and complete. And then we put them out in a fan like that and got the sergeant to take the photograph from the first floor window. But looking after cars and keeping them clean and tidy is not new to me and something that I've always done. And my traffic car, when I went out in a car, if it was filthy, the first thing I did was go and get it washed. And we had car wash facilities at different places that we could use. Sometimes they were staffed up by a car washer. If not, we had a key to the garage and you could get in and do it yourself. And my philosophy was always that, how can I, as a traffic officer, pull somebody up and tell them, advise, educate, or prosecute, whatever it happens to be, on the state of their car and how messy and uncared for it is, if my traffic car looks like a pile of junk. It might be roadworthy. Well, it will be roadworthy. It will be legal. So it's not, but it was all about image for me and that professionalism. And so my car was always immaculate. And a certain sense of pride that comes with that. And if you talk to other traffic officers, you think of Bosco, that used to be on Twitter, ex-traffic cop in Dorset, retired now, but he talks about his traffic cars and the fact that they were immaculate. He even went to the extent of polishing and waxing his traffic cars. I never actually did that, but it was always about that professionalism and standards and keeping the car clean. Other than that, that is 1998 over and done with. Not a great deal to tell you there. I was massively involved in traffic. I was going to collisions. I started to take an interest in taxis because there are an awful lot of rogue taxis and unkempt, uncared for, lackadaisical approach by taxi drivers to the standards that they were required to adhere to by the council. At one point, I ran an operation on taxis, tackling poor operators, but also poor drivers, with their driving standards, with their not wearing their badges and correct badges for the safety of the passengers that they're picking up, not having the correct roof signs or the correct plates on, and all this of it. And we used to run an operation occasionally where we'd have the council private hire enforcement people with us, but we also had the VOSA people with us that we used to call wheel tappers. Used to bring out the engineers with us who'd come out and look and tap things and say, brakes and act on this or that, and they'd just prohibit vehicles there and then. So it was all about keeping vehicles safe on the road and making sure that people that were getting taxis were getting in vehicles that were safe and legal and operated by people who were appropriately licensed to do so, not rogue taxi drivers. Used to always work very well, but that was something that was a bee in my bonnet for a while. But mostly just dealing with collisions and dealing with speeders and going out doing speed checks and doing laser and doing VASCAR and getting involved in pursuits and just having an absolute whale of a time. Absolutely brilliant job. And had I not transferred in 2005, I really honestly believe that I would have retired from Greater Manchester Police still connected to traffic in one way or another, whether I'd made sergeant or inspector or whatever my career path would have followed with Greater Manchester, I would still be involved with traffic because it was just a square peg in a square hole, and I loved it. So that's all for today. Moving on tomorrow, 1999, day 10. A few other bits and pieces to come through as my career progresses. I'll try and think of a few that I've not got much on the list there. I'll try and think of a few other things and talk through some stuff. And then and some personal changes as well in 1999 that we can go through as well. So that's it. That's all for today. Thanks for dropping in. Replay viewers, if you've got this far, thank you for watching too. Hope to see you tomorrow on 33 years in 31 days, day 10. A third of the way through tomorrow, more or less. And I look forward to seeing you then. Have a safe evening. Stay safe wherever you are. And I shall wish you good night.